Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
And welcome back, everybody, to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. I am Sam Thrash with Fall Obsession, your host for this week's podcast episode once again. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys have been enjoying our recent week's episodes. We've had several guests on here recently to kind of recap some hunts and some stories that they've had in this past 2020 hunting season. And we're going to continue to do that today. I promise that we will get some turkey hunting content on this podcast for you guys in the very near future. But for now, we have another awesome story and experience that we're going to recap this week. We have our very own staffer, Brendan Scott from Oklahoma, joining us this week on our podcast. Brendan, welcome to Fall Obsession Podcast.
Hey, thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Diving in and talking about this Colorado elk hunt that you had this last year. Looking forward to it.
Heck yeah.
So before we get started, I'll let you have the floor, and if you just want to give our listeners some brief background on you and kind of your experience as a hunter, and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, my name's Brendan Scott. I'm born and raised in the Oklahoma Panhandle. Lived there, well, I guess pretty much forever. So I started hunting with my dad when I was 4 years old, and mainly just whitetail and all that good stuff. Then as I got old enough to start going out on my own, I really decided I'd like to hunt a lot more than just whitetail. So been the last several years been chasing elk and pronghorn and mule deer and bears and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
Heck yeah, man. That's where it's at. So I'm just going to dive right in, and we'll get started with today's conversation, because you did successfully kill a really nice bull elk this last year in Colorado. We're going to go through that story and those details, and we're going to break it down as much as we can as far as your experience and how all that came about. So to kind of start things off for us, I mean, there's so many places in North America that you can elk hunt. So what drew you to Colorado? Why did you want to hunt elk in Colorado?
Well, honestly, at first what drew me to hunt in Colorado is I put in for the New Mexico draw like 2 years in a row, didn't ever draw, and I started building some preference points in Wyoming, still never drew. So finally I was like, I'm going elk hunting this year, one way or the other. So I started looking into OTC units, which over-the-counter units in Colorado, and they have, I mean, you can go, they got just as many archery OTC units as they do draw units. So, I mean, I pretty much, well, that first year we went, we went with a guide because I didn't really know nothing about elk hunting, and that guy taught me a lot. We got into some elk that year, but, I mean, nothing really happened. And then the next year, I mean, that was enough to really start the addiction. The year after that, I started watching a lot of videos on like Randy Newberg and them guys that do it religiously and really figure out what to look for, you know. And then I picked a unit and started. I mean, I picked a unit that was fairly close to my home. It's living in the Oklahoma Panhandle is good because I can drive. I mean, in 6 hours, I can be in prime elk. So yeah, makes it real handy. So I picked a unit fairly close to home and really just started studying it on OnX. And I used Go Hunt and OnX, and I found a pretty good place that second year I started going that there was quite a few elk. Blotched several instances that I should have killed elk, but gotta learn.
And you're going from the start. You've been doing an archery hunt.
Yes, I haven't ever gun hunted. I've always gone archery.
Gotcha. Okay. So you referenced the apps like Onyx and stuff like that. There's so many hunters that I have talked to that have utilized tools like that, and it's really a must, honestly. If you're hunting elk or mule deer or antelope or anything like that, I know we've used it. Drew and myself up in Montana hunting pronghorn before. Man, whenever you're doing a do-it-yourself hunt, it's really a must, and I'm confident that's kind of the opinion across the board.
Oh yeah. I honestly don't know how you do it without it. I mean, it's so hard having that information right at the palm of your hands, and still it's incredibly challenging to put that together and still go find them with even. So I can't even imagine what it would have been like and not having it.
Absolutely. So this trip this past year, this successful hunt that we're going to talk about, it's been several years in the making.
Oh yeah.
You've had several trips out there that come close or been unsuccessful. I'm kind of generalizing, your numerous years here, all into one. But what kind of research and planning and scouting do you specifically do to make a trip like this possible?
Every year in about March, for some reason the bug bites me. I don't know why it hits me so early, but it does. And I get kind of worthless. I start just researching new units and looking around. We'll see if there's a place that I'd like better with OnX. And I look, I just Google, like I'll pick a unit and I'll Google it and I'll search literally hours upon hours upon hours and just see what I can find on the internet. Use different forums too, like Hunt Talk is a really, really good one. You can find tons of just knowledge right at your fingertips, just right there. And a lot of them guys are just really happy to help you.
Yeah.
So I usually start looking around March, but I kind of found this spot that I really like, and I know the area now. And I kind of know what the elk are going to be doing and, about the area they're going to be in. So, and that's unless they get a whole bunch of pressure, then it's, here we go trying to find elk again. But I always have a plan A, B, C, and D. But I usually about July to August, I get real serious about it in August. Me and my fiance will go up there and go backpacking and go camping, and I'll take about 10 cameras, and we'll set them all up. Like very end of July into August, and we'll set all our cameras up and let them sit for the entire month. And I'll set them above different wallows and water holes and meadows. And if I see a good game trail, I'll stick one there. If I see where there's some rubs, I'll stick one in that area. Or, just like whitetail where you're looking for travel corridors, same thing with elk.
Yeah.
So I'll stick my cameras up and then let them sit. And that first weekend of elk season, we'll usually run up there for the weekend. And every year we'll check our cameras, figure out where the hot spots are at, and go from there.
Gotcha.
But I'll usually hunt, like I said, I picked a unit fairly close to home and really learned it just because it's nice. Cause it's a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but we can leave on a Friday night after work, get there at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, set up camp. And by the time you get that done, it's time to hunt. So I'll usually try to go every weekend, and then I'll pick about 9 days or so that I'll take off work and we'll go then. Gotcha. But a lot of days in the woods.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to put in the work up front for sure.
Oh, yeah.
You're hunting essentially public land up there, so have you ever had issues with your cameras getting jacked or anything like that?
A couple times, but it's really not bad. I got pictures of guys that'll walk by it and they'll, I've had a couple guys moon it, which is funny. As long as they don't take it, I'm cool with that, but I do the same thing. But no, nothing too bad. The main thing that sucks is if when you have, you'll find some elk and you'll try to make a move on them. Well, someone could see those same elk, and they go the wrong way, and their wind pushes the elk off. Well, there you go.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's the hardest part. But
So when you go up there and you hunt, do you interact with a lot of other hunters up there? Or you have to share your area basically pretty frequently, or are you able to do your own thing for the most part?
not too bad. We try to hike in off the trailhead, 4 or 5 miles or so. We try to go a couple miles in on the trailhead, and then cut in a couple more miles.
Gotcha.
And that usually gets you, because most of the guys out there are either hunting from camp, just right there at the truck, or they have horses and they're in there a lot farther than I want to walk.
Yeah.
So
again, you've got several years in a row now doing this. What kind of pieces of gear and stuff like that have you found over the years to be pretty much essential for a comfortable, I say comfortable, as comfortable as you can make it, and a successful trip like this?
Well, on our backpacking hunts, this year I got a Lux Octopeak tent, a hot tent, and I got a backpacking stove. And those things were the huge difference makers right there. This year, I don't know if you remember, but early September we got a big snow. And up in the mountains, I think we got like 10 inches. And we were up there hunting then, and that stove kept us toasty. I mean, it was nice. And that's a big part of it right there, is just staying comfortable. And another big thing that I found that really makes a difference is don't go cheap on your boots. My very first year I went, it was the second day in, we hiked down into the nastiest, worst. I think we dropped like 2,000-3,000 foot of elevation. I mean, it was just stupid. And we got down in there, got into some elk, and then forgot we had to get back out of it. Well, I learned on that day, cheap boots are not going to fly. I couldn't even hardly walk the rest of the trip. And so from then on, I told myself, yeah, we're gonna spend some money. So I really looked into Kinetric and crispy boots, and I ended up going with the Crispies. And the last 2 years, those things have been lifesavers. I mean, that's a big thing right there. And also, another thing not to go too cheap on is backpacks. I looked through all the different backpacks and ended up going with a Mystery Ranch, and that thing is also a lifesaver. When I packed my bull out this year, I mean, it was hell, to say the least. But I think that thing definitely made all the. If I wouldn't have had that backpack, it would have been. I don't know how I would have got it out of there, honestly.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think you've actually done talking about those boots. I think you've actually done a review on those boots for us in the past. So
yes,
and that is
yes, I did.
That's available on our website under our review section at fallobsession.com. So anybody who's interested in hearing a little bit more about those specifically can go check that out. So before we get into the actual story of the elk hunt this year, my last question is going to be the years leading up to this. What are some of the closest encounters you've had to actually getting it done?
So it would have been not last year when I shot my bull, but the year before. That was the first year that I finally figured out, my calls, and I figured out, I put 2 and 2 together, put all my mistakes together. So I thought, and, the biggest thing I learned was, when you're hunting whitetail, you think, oh, well, I need to be behind this tree and I can just draw, because they're going to bust me. Or I need to be in these bushes so they'll bust me. Well, elk aren't looking for a human. So that I didn't realize that at the time. So I was set up behind this evergreen tree, thinking I would call the bulls past the evergreen tree and I'd get a shot like that. I'd be completely concealed, drawn back, all that good stuff. Well, I'm calling, and I call. First off, I call this little bull in. He comes by at 30 yards. Perfect. Couldn't have been any better. Well, I ended up calling another bull in, and I ended up calling in 9 bulls on this one time, and they're all within 45 yards. But they won't come to the side of the tree where I needed them to come. So I have all these bulls in bow range, and one of them was nice. One of them was probably 320 or so inch 6x6, which would have been awesome, But
Yeah.
I couldn't. I tried at the last second. They were starting to leave. I was like, all right, I'm gonna just draw and jump out in front of the tree and see. Well, I tried that. It was an epic fail, to say the least. There's a lot more elk on the side of the mountain than I realized. I can promise you that. But yeah, I definitely. Last year we got close, just couldn't make it happen. So.
Yeah. So I know I said that was going to be my last question, but you were talking about numbers and the 320 bull and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know you run cameras for the areas you're going to be in, so you kind of have an idea, I would assume. But going into the hunt, at least this year, the year that you killed your bull, what caliber of bull were you expecting to kill? Because again, you're on a public piece, and you're talking to a novice elk hunter here. So I'm asking more than with our listeners, basically. What caliber of bull were you expecting this year before the hunt?
Well, expecting. I mean, I'd have been in Colorado. You can't really set your sights, for 400-inch public land bulls. I mean, they're there, but it's very, very, very unlikely. So I was expecting, just like in years past, if you see 300 to 320-inch bulls, you're doing real good. This year on camera, I had an absolute giant. I think I actually may have sent y'all a picture of it. But I'm honestly, I'll send it to you again. But I'm thinking he's anywhere in the 380 to 400-inch range. I mean, he was an absolute giant.
Wow. And
whenever we get into the hunt, I actually have an encounter with this bull at 50 yards, but just couldn't get it done. But funny enough, a muzzleloader hunter shot him that evening.
Oh, no
which
kidding.
was a heartbreaker for me, but good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you get to interact with him much at all, or just kind of heard it through the grapevine?
Oh, I seen it happen.
Oh, really?
Yep. We went up to the top of that mountain that evening, just to kind of. I was just gonna let the elk calm down because we were really in them that morning, and I didn't want to bump them, because once you bump them, they'll run 2 counties away. And so I was just gonna go up top and just glass and watch, see what they're doing that night. Well, I was watching that bull. All of a sudden, I hear the gunshot. I'm like, no, you have got to be kidding me. And sure enough, them fellas got him. But I mean, good for them, because I don't care what state you hunt in. That's a world-class animal right there.
Absolutely.
Especially to come out of Colorado, public land.
Absolutely. Wow.
But yeah, like I said, usually my sights aren't too high, but this year, seeing that bull on camera, I was pumped.
I'll bet. Absolutely. Anybody would be.
Oh yeah.
So let's get into the story of yours this year and take us through getting out there and the whole 9 yards. How'd it go down?
Well, leading up to the season, like I said, I've been in this for 4 years now, and this year it was going to happen one way or the other. I was going to shoot. I didn't care if I had to shoot a cow. I was going to have some elk meat this year.
Yeah.
So coming into it, I'm thinking, if I call a legal bull in, I'm shooting it. And that the very first day, we get camp set up. We go check all our cameras. We see that bull, the bull we're after. It was me and my fiance. She went up there with me that trip. And like I said, that was just more of a scouting trip than anything. We're just checking our cameras. But I mean, if something was going to happen, we were going to let it happen. But we call in. So we go up there, check our cameras. I see what the elk are doing. And as we're walking up the mountain, I'm like, Courtney, get down. I see horns. She's like, where? And at both the same time, we both say, holy crap. There he is. And he's just going straight up the mountain. And There was no absolute way I could catch him. I hit a couple cow calls, and I'm watching him. I hit a couple cow calls. Well, I hear some crashing behind me. I turn around, and Courtney's like, "Babe, there's a bull." And I'm like, "Oh, crap." So he's already got us busted. So he takes off running, and like, man, that happened fast. Well, we hunt the next day we hunt, and we lose the elk. We can't really find them. So the next weekend, or the next week, is going to be the week that I come for good, come to stay. And that very first day, me and my buddy Steve, he was going to come with me that trip. We get up there, and we pull up, we get our camp set up, and we decide we want to go to a lookout, go try to spot anything. So we go to the top, and not really see nothing, but I mean, it is lit up. There's bugles everywhere. I mean, just like you'd see it on TV. I mean, that's the best way I can explain it.
Wow.
And we're both like in awe of what's going on. So I hit 2 cow calls, and I have 2 spikes come running in, and I'm like, man, I don't know what is going on here, but this isn't acting like this is public land Colorado. Like, we timed it perfectly. The rut was on. So it's awesome. You know, we only seen the 2 elk, but still we called 2 bulls in on the very first day of our actual hunt. So the next morning we get up, and we actually get waken up at about 3:00 in the morning. There's elk within probably 50 yards of our camp.
Oh, wow.
The bugles were just crazy. And I mean, we had a fire going or in my stove, and we had the stove going and everything. They didn't even care.
Huh.
They're just all over. And I'm like, well, I guess we're in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we get up that morning, go try to find the bulls, and we get set up in this meadow where there's a wallow that I had quite a few pictures of them using. And we're set up, and we have these little cows. I mean, they were not full grown at all. They come into that wallow, and they start drinking. And then I told myself I was going to shoot a cow, but after I seen the pictures of that bull, you know, there's no way, especially on day number 2.
Yeah.
And so we get set up, and all of a sudden I hear this bugle behind us. And I told Steve, he said, "Did you hear that bugle?" I said, "Yeah, that's a human, dude." Like, it was the worst sounding bugle I'd ever heard in my life. Like, I'm telling Steve, that's a human. Like, come on, there's no way that's an elk. Well, it keeps getting closer, and he's like, "Dude, I'm pretty sure that's an elk." I'm like, "No, that is a human. I promise." Well, 5 minutes goes by, and it's getting real close. And I'm like, well, I guess these people have the same thoughts we do. I wish they'd shut up. And all of a sudden, about 10 cows and a bull come running out at 100 yards away. I'm like, holy crap, Steve, those are elk. Like, it's on. And, you know, me, if I would have just listened to Steve and be like, oh, those are elk, not you know, a crappy sounding human, they would have... we probably could have got a shot on them. Well, that's when I'm like, well, okay. Well, then we hear another bugle coming the same way. So we just take on a mad dash, get set up right in that same little opening where they came out of. We get set up within probably 30 seconds of us getting set up. One cow runs out. She's at 15 yards tops. Like,
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I did not know how I didn't get seen, because I'm just right out in the open. And that kind of plays into how I said, they're not looking for humans. Just let your camo do the work for you.
Yeah.
And they run right by me. I had like 3 or 4 of them run right by me like that. Then a couple more were out at 30. Then I had 5 or 10 of them out at, 40, 50 yards. And then I hear the bugle, and he's right there. I turn and look, and there he is, the giant. And I'm like, holy crap. And Steve's like, dude, that's him. Well, the last 2 cows that he's following, I'm guessing the one had to have been the hot one. They turned, and they, instead of wanting to go where all the other cows went, they decided they wanted to go down to that water hole where we had just been sitting. And to get there, they got to go downwind from us. So they turn, they go down to the water hole, smell us, blow out of there. I had that giant bull at 50 yards, just didn't have a shot because, I mean, it was thick in there.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was a heartbreaker for sure, but still pumped us up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that evening we separated. Actually, he went and looked over on another saddle, and I went to the same place where he'd been seeing the bulls. And I just sat on the water. I didn't see nothing all night. I seen a real big mule deer, but didn't have a mule deer tag. And I think he's seen a couple bears and a couple cows. I don't know. It was a pretty slow evening. Well, we made the plan that the next morning we're gonna go hit. We're gonna where the elk wanted to go. We were gonna be there already. Well, we get up there. We left camp at like 3:00 in the morning. We were up there 2 hours before light. I mean, we were settled up, ready for something to happen. Well, about the time the sun comes up, the elk are bugling way behind us. Like, well, crap. They already got way past us. They must have just been there already. I don't know, but so. I start calling and bugling, and the one bull acts really interested, and so I'm like, he's coming, man. And Steve thinks the same thing. Yeah, he's coming in. Well, about an hour goes by of us just playing cat and mouse. He never comes in. So, and another thing I told myself this year too, by the way, is be aggressive. You know, with whitetail hunting, you get too aggressive, you blow it. Well, with elk hunting, I think the more aggressive you get, the better. Yeah. And I told myself, in the years prior, I've missed several opportunities just from not being aggressive. So I looked at Steve and I said, let's go after him. I mean, the wind was right, the thermals were good, so let's go after him. So we 10, 15 yards at a time. We walk 15 yards, call a little bit, just some soft cow calls, lost cow calls and stuff like that. And we're just kind of following the herd. And finally, probably we moved 200-300 yards, and we finally see the elk, and we can't get any closer. There, I mean, it's just a big opening, and there's no way we were gonna get closer. We were gonna get seen. So I told Steve, I said, well, it's now or never. You know, I mean, I told myself we were gonna be aggressive, so let's be aggressive. So I said, I'm gonna start hammering down the bugle, just make the loudest, meanest bugles I can, and I want you to jump. There's a little cedar, so I want you to jump in the cedar and start making as much noise and as much racket as you can. I mean, beat the crap out of it. So I hammered down with as aggressive as I can be, and Steve's jumping into this little cedar and actually breaks it off. So he just starts slamming it into trees. And about that time, I said, "Dude, he's coming hard." This bull comes running in. Charging in, comes into 30 yards. I mean, just staring right into our souls. Wow. And he starts chuckling and bugling, but I don't have a shot. It is thick up there. So I did not have a shot at all. And so he probably, I kid you not, I bet it felt like 2 hours, but it was probably about 10 minutes. This bull just standing down here, and we can't move a muscle. He's just standing there. I mean, chuckling, bugling, like the hair on both of our necks are just standing up. He's so close. And I remember I said a prayer. I was like, please, God, let this bull turn. Don't let him go the same way he came. Let him turn and go straight up the mountain. A few minutes later, sure enough, he turns and starts to go up the mountain. So I go to draw back. I get halfway drawn. And he stops. Like, no. Oh, so it's probably another 2 or 3 minutes at half draw, and I was dead. I'm like, man, come on. Finally, he looks away, so I let my bow down. And then he starts walking again. So I draw back real quick, and Steve's like, 38, 40, 42, 43. And finally, I had one little shot, probably, I'd say about the size of like home plate on a baseball field through the trees right into his vitals, and I smoked him. He went about 15 yards, crashed, and we started celebrating. I was like, oh my gosh, we did it. Like, we're celebrating. All he says, dude, the bull's up. I turn around, oh crap, the bull is back up and running away. I knock an arrow, and he's like, shoot him. I said, how far is he? I said, he's gotta be like 100. So I just put my 60-yard pin way high. I shoot, I hit a log, And you just, and I was like, oh, I think that was a lot farther than 100, dude. He's like, yeah, I think so too. So we laid down. We just laid down and gave it probably 20, 30 minutes. And all of a sudden you hear the bull just crash. I mean, I'm like, oh, we did it, man. We did it. Well, after we gave him about 10 more minutes after he crashed, we walk up to him, and from the time I hit him, he went 15 yards and crashed. And then he got back up and probably went another 60, 70 yards after that and crashed again. But, I mean, that was my fiance didn't like hearing this, but that's probably the best day of my life.
Well, I can imagine so, man. You put in all this work for so many years.
I forgot a very big piece to this story. I can't believe I forgot. The day me and Courtney, my fiance, were up there, I guess there was a weekend between that, because we get on some bulls. I start calling. I have this bull coming, and this is the day of that snow that I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
I call these bulls in to 30 yards. He's just a 4x4, but like I said, I was going to kill a bull. I draw back on this bull. He takes a couple steps, and I had to let my draw down and get around the tree. I go to get around the tree. I slip in the snow and break my sights off my bow.
Oh no.
True story. I kept the sights too. That's a memory I'll always have. She told me that all the way, it was about a 3-hour drive to and from Colorado Springs. She said the entire trip, I didn't say a single word. We went, bought some new sights, came back, I sighted my bow in. I did not say a word. I was heartbroken, to say the least.
Wow.
But like I said, an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it worked out in the end for sure.
Oh yeah.
Man, we've had a lot of people on this podcast, a lot of guests. I don't think I've ever heard anybody tell a story with as much excitement and enthusiasm as you just told that story with. That was incredible. That's not only just an awesome and unique story, but man, that is one heck of an experience, man. That's crazy awesome.
It was, like I said, so many years of just trial and error. Finally, every year you put a little bit more and a little bit more together. And finally this year it all came together. So
Yeah.
I couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. So you hear him crash. Tell us about walking up on him, finding him, your reaction when you found him, all that stuff.
When we heard the crash, we sat for a few more minutes and we started walking. And I was like, man, I didn't think he was this far. And my heart just started pounding. It's like, man, I know I heard a crash. And elk don't really bleed a whole lot. I mean, I hit mine. Mine was quartering away, and it went in front of the last rib and went out right behind the shoulder. So I mean, I double lunged him. I mean, it couldn't have been really a whole lot better. And he did not bleed much at all. There was no blood trail. Finally, we were just walking, and all of a sudden I see the horns. I'm like, Steve, there he is! And I knock an arrow just in case, and I get up close to him, and I know he's done. So I started shouting. I mean, it was. We got up to him and seen that he was bigger than I thought he was. I mean, he was real big. So we found him and everything, and Courtney, actually, she was going to come cook for us that week that we were there, but she had school, so she couldn't be there that day or the night before. So she's about an hour away, and I call her. I just got my bull. Are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, I'm dead serious. So she comes. I'm like, all right, Steve, let's hike down to the trailhead. So we just leave we'd leave the bull there. We field dress him, all that good stuff. But we go down and meet her. And we get to the truck, and she's waiting on us. I'm like, well, I didn't get him. She's like, are you kidding me? It's like, no, we didn't get him. So we hike all the way back up to camp, and we're sitting around just eating breakfast. And then Steve says, well, you ready to go get that bull? And Courtney's like, you got him? Like, heck yeah, I got him. So we take her up there, which thank God there was an extra person, because that was the most brutal. She has a quote, I think, on a video of me saying, I'd never want to kill an elk again in my entire life. As we're getting this elk out of there.
One and done.
Yeah. So we get up there and she tries to pick the head up and she can't even get it up. I'm like, yeah. So we get him all caped out and we quartered him out, and this thing I had never seen an elk, dead before this, and it was crazy. Courtney all she could carry out was 2 back straps and a little bit of neck meat, and that was it. It was all I could take out that first load was the I think I took 1 hind quarter and a just some scraps, and then it was brutal. I mean, I didn't realize how heavy those things. I mean, just a hind quarter is like 200 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, they are all there. So we packed this sucker out. It takes us probably most of the day to get him packed out. Well, we get him hung up in a tree down probably 200-300 yards from camp or so, and this story just never quits giving, I promise. So we get this elk hung up a couple hundred yards from camp, and I don't know what made me decide I wanted to walk back. Oh, I remember what it was. I went up there because I was going to cut some backstrap off so we could eat for dinner. I go up there, and there's a dang bear eating on my elk.
Oh no.
It had got in. It was halfway climbed up the tree. I mean, I guess I should have done a better job, I guess. But so this bear is eating on one of the quarters of my elk. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. I ran up to him. Hey, get out of here. This bear, I didn't even have a sidearm or nothing, but I didn't care. I ran up to this thing, and Courtney's freaking out. That's the first bear she's ever seen, especially that close.
Yeah.
And so we finally get the bear gone. Then I'm like, well, we need to get this meat down to the truck. So we decide we're going to hike the meat back down to the truck. We hike it down to the truck. We weren't really able to salvage much of that quarter just because they say, I mean, carnivores have a lot of different diseases, so
yeah.
We weren't able to keep much of that quarter, which really was a bummer, but we still ended up with an entire 145 quart ice chest, 100% jam packed with meat, deboned meat.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was just crazy, but we got them all cleaned up that night, and we took the entire next day. We didn't even leave the next day. We took the entire next day, just sit there and hang out. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better hunt.
That is absolutely awesome, man. Very cool.
It was time of my life. Ready to do it again next year.
So you changed your mind. You are going to do it again.
Oh yeah. If I shoot one again, I'll probably say the same thing. But
what did you end up scoring him?
Yeah, he's just shy of 315.
Okay, that's awesome.
So, I mean, for first archery bull, I mean, especially being in Colorado public land, you can't really. I don't know anyone that would pass that up.
Man, I always tell folks, in my opinion, the score, the inches, it's a number. The trophies and the experience and the memories and everything. I ask people about what their animal scored on the podcast, just so that our listeners have a gauge kind of for the caliber of animal that we're talking about. So that's an awesome bull, man. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So, and I have one more question too, regarding the elk story, and this is more just an educational question. And again, you're talking to a novice, like some of our listeners might be even. But when you say a legal bull, for my sake and for our listeners' sake, for those who don't know, in Colorado, what is a legal bull?
You have to have 4 on one side, I believe.
4 on one side. Okay.
Yep. So 4. It's either 4 on one side or 4x4. I can't remember to be exact, but I mean, I wasn't gonna shoot one unless he was 4x4.
Gotcha.
So just to stay clear of the law.
I hear you. Well, man, like I said, an absolutely awesome story, and you tell it very well. That I thoroughly enjoyed that. That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
So, I'm going to change gears just a little bit, because while your Colorado elk hunt and everything is the kind of our highlight of this episode, you also killed a really nice whitetail in Kansas this last year. So
Yes, sir.
let's hear a little bit about that before we wrap it up and cut you loose.
Yeah. Well, in Kansas, I did kind of the same thing. I was fortunate enough to draw a tag this year, and I did the same thing like I did in Colorado. All those tags or all those cameras that I had in Colorado, literally within the next week, I had me and Courtney had taken a trip up to Kansas and got all of those cameras set out there. And I had some absolute giants on camera. I mean, Kansas definitely lived up to it. And I'm lucky enough that my cousin lives up there and he farms quite a bit of ground up there. So
Awesome.
that helped out a lot. But so there's a couple bucks that we were interested in going after. I mean, it was all spot and stock. It's southwestern Kansas. There's no trees. It's desolate. I mean, all you have is CRP grass and fields. I mean, that's it. Some wheat fields, some milo, and at that time they had already cut the corn. So there's not nothing to hide in. So me being a bigger guy, knew it would be a challenge. I've always hunted at a tree stand, never really spot and stalked whitetail with a bow.
Yeah.
And I had gone down there probably, well, that first weekend actually that we went down there, we found some decent bucks. One was mature, just nothing that I wanted to put my Kansas tag on. So we hunted this same places for about 2 weeks, and never really seen nothing that I just was absolutely thrilled to going after. Well, finally my cousin says, well, I got some family that has a piece of land about 30 miles from here. Let's roll over there this evening and just see what we see. So we run out there, and within 10 minutes we locate this. I'm about to throw a big number at you that's pretty tough to believe, but I swear it's true. This buck had to have been at least 180s. I mean, an absolute giant out in the middle. He was with a doe out in the middle of this cut milo field. And there's probably about an hour left before dark. My cousin says, well, I'll sit here in the spot and scoop and watch if you want to go after him. I'm like, well, okay, let's do it. So I get out there. I'm belly crawling all through this stuff. I mean, because cut milo is probably, up to your midway up to your waist or so. It's not very tall.
Yeah.
And I'm crawling through all this, and I pop up, and they just stayed in the same spot. Finally, the doe laid down, but the buck stood up. So I crawl, 30, 40 yards, get up a range, and I'm like 300 yards out, 200 yards out, 100 yards out. By the time I hit 100 yards out, it's really starting to get dark. So I try to clear the rest of the ground as quick as I can. And about the time it's almost, it's going to have to happen. I range him. He's at like 69, which is a long shot, but I shoot all year long out to 70, 80 yards. So I was comfortable with the shot. And I draw back on him, shoot right below him.
Oh,
you have got to be kidding me. I just missed a 180-inch giant. I was way heartbroken. I hadn't even seen a buck that big.
Yeah.
And he takes off. Well, it's a long week. Finally, we get back out there, and this week it's already, by this time, late November. The rest really starting. It's opening weekend of pheasant season. Well, we relocate this buck about 2 miles away, and he's actually on some public land. Kansas has a lot of walk-in hunting land, and it's really nice actually.
Huh.
But he's actually on some public land, so I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna go after him. The same buck, the same giant. I don't know how I got lucky to find him twice in a row. What I did. Well, we're going. I start belly crawling, trying to get up there to him, and I get about 100 yards away from him or so, my cousin texts me and says, "Hey man, you have pheasant hunters in that field with you right now." I said, "You've got to be kidding me." So he's like, "Well, just sit tight. Maybe they'll push him to you." Well, that's never how it works. They pushed him away, and he ran away. And it's like, man, them guys were like, "Did you see that buck?" Like, "Yeah, I seen that buck."
Yeah, I saw him.
And so we give it till the afternoon, and I knew where he ran off towards, and there was a house over there, just right on the corner, where a guy had a bunch of farm machinery parked. Well, I just went and knocked on the door and said, "Hey man, I seen a big buck out in this field earlier. I think he ran out onto your place. Would you care if I go after him?" He says, "Man, you can kill all them deer you want. They've been eating all my sunflowers." Like,
No
sweet.
way.
I'm your huckleberry.
Yeah, can I get your number and come back next year?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, I'm like, well, heck yeah. So I start. I'm walking across a harvested sunflower field, and I don't know if you've ever seen what a harvested sunflower field looks like, but there's nothing. I mean, it's just the abyss.
Yeah.
Kind of like living in the Oklahoma Panhandle. But so I get all the way out to the. I mean, it's probably. It was an entire section. So, I mean, I walk all the way out into the edge of it, and I get close to this walking hunting land again. And I'm like, I think I just seen some horns. And I sit there. I just hit my knees, and I just glass for probably 10, 15 minutes, and nothing happens. So I just continue walking. I get to the edge of the field, and all of a sudden, like, oh crap! I do see horns, and it's him. He's like 300 yards out, and he's walking in the CRP, about to jump the fence and get in the same barren sunflower field I'm in. Which, if he sees me in here, it's definitely done. I mean, I've already missed him a week prior. Well, he, the only thing I could think to do is as soon as he jumped to get into the field that I was in, I jumped the fence to get into the field he was in. So we jumped the fence at the same time. And I get hid behind some plum thickets that were caught up in the fence. And he's going straight away from him. I mean, he must have got that doe bred because he was cruising. I mean, a solid trot. Huh. And I grunt as loud as I can. He just doesn't even hear it because it was a fairly windy day. So then I had a black rack in my bag. So I start hammering the horns together as loud as I can. And he stops, turns around, pins his ears back, and starts, running. I'm like, holy crap, it's going to happen. He's coming. So I get set up, and I got my rangefinder out, and I can't range nothing. There's nothing out there to range. I'm like, well, crap. Finally, I ranged this one little area where I think there was just a little tumbleweed sitting there, and it was like 55 yards. So I'm like, perfect. Well, he kind of loses interest and starts going the other way again. So I hammer down with I'm just as aggressive as I can be with the grunt call, and it makes him mad. He turns, comes to me, and so he's coming in. He's coming on a rope. And I think, man, this is gonna happen. And I'm ranging him. He's about 100 yards out, and the closer he gets, the bigger he gets. I mean, I start to see he's got kickers. I mean, he's just a big mainframe 10. I mean, a giant.
Wow.
And he closes in about 100 yards, and the pumper. I mean, there was a well in the middle of that sunflower field. The pumper starts driving down the road. I'm like, no. So that buck, he sees that guy, and so he starts they don't get that big for being dumb.
No.
He takes off running just straight. Instead of coming at a beeline to me, he just kind of angles it back off. But he's still coming my direction. So I get on him, and I range him. He's at so I arranged that spot where I thought he was going to be, which was my first mistake. You can already see where this is going. And he comes in, I shoot right over his back. Like, you have got to be kidding me. I miss the same giant, a week in a row.
Wow.
Like, I called my fiance that night and said, this is it. Tomorrow it's either, I was so emotionally drained just from the whole, it's just tough hunting Kansas spot and stock. It really is.
Yeah.
I told her, I said, tomorrow, which is going to be Sunday, is the last day. If I don't get one, I'm coming home, we're going to start hunting Oklahoma. And so that next morning, me and my cousin go out, and he's like, dude, there's a buck. We're just glassing from the road. He's like, there's a big buck. And I look, I'm like, holy cow, that's a real big buck. Where did he come from? And he's like, well, make a move on him. So he's actually in a really good place. He's with a doe in a really good place, down in the middle of a tailwater pit. So all I had to do was get upwind or get downwind of him, and so he couldn't smell me. I get set up, come over the pit, and there he is. They're just laying there. I range him. I think he was like 52 yards. And so I just sit there and wait. Finally, he stands up. I drew back and drilled him. He went probably 60 yards, crashed. I mean, it was couldn't have happened any sooner, to say the least.
Wow.
And that buck was real cool. When I seen him, I thought he was a lot bigger than he really was. He's an old warrior. He had broken off on his other side, and we scored him, and he was 155 inches as he was, broke off and everything. And then if he would have had those 3 tines on the other side, he'd have been 170 inches.
Wow. That is awesome deer.
Oh, yeah. It was still, I was more than proud of him.
Yeah,
biggest
man.
Buck. I killed that muley a couple years ago that was bigger, but that's a muley.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest whitetail buck I could ever even imagine shooting. It'd have been cool if I shot that 180, but man, just wasn't in the cards. So.
Man, yeah, the last day to be able to kill a buck like that, still that's awesome.
Oh yeah, I was, especially. Courtney said the night before she could tell in my voice how just done I was with it. You miss a buck that big 2 times in a row, and they weren't exactly give me shots either, but still, you only get so many handful of chances at Boone and Crockett deer. It don't matter where you hunt, who you are. It's just not something that happens every day.
Yep.
And to miss 2 of them, the same deer, same season, a week apart, come on.
Well, glad that it worked out and you're able to put a stud Kansas buck on the ground. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on this week on the podcast and joining us. A couple of really awesome stories. But before we let you go, we gotta hit you with our questions that we ask all of our first timers on the podcast.
Yeah.
So the first one, I think I already know the answer to it because we asked folks what their favorite hunting memory is. I think we might have already talked about it.
Yep. Yeah, you got the whole rundown.
So I'll jump to the next one, which is top bucket list hunt or hunts that you have not gotten to complete yet.
I'd say my top bucket list hunt would be Yukon moose.
Awesome.
I think that would be just sick. Archery. I think that would be amazing.
Well, if anybody can do it, I'm pretty sure you can. You and probably make an awesome story out of it in the end too.
Yeah, I'll have my backup bow with me. I learned that lesson.
Take an extra sight with you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Last question for you. Kind of circling back to the elk hunt. What is one big piece of advice you'd give someone who is wanting to do a do-it-yourself elk hunt for the first time this upcoming season?
I'd say put in the work. You can if you take the time like you should and scout out an area using the tools that you have, like OnX and stuff like that. There's no sense in not being able to find elk. If you just wait till you get there, and it might take you 2 or 3 days just to find elk, but if you can use OnX to find north facing slopes with water and thick cover. Elk are going to be there. You're going to find them. So, and there's not a whole lot of places on per unit that have that. So if you take the time while you're there, or while you're at home, do your scouting, then do the hard scouting then. then it makes your chances of shooting elk a lot easier.
Awesome. There you go, guys. Well, again, man, I appreciate you coming on for this week's episode. Really enjoyed talking to you and hearing those awesome stories. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, guys, thank y'all for listening to another week's episode. If you have not already, hit that follow and subscribe button for our podcast on whatever app you choose to listen on. We are on all the major podcast platforms. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're putting new content on our social media pages daily and trying to get some more videos on our YouTube channel here coming up pretty quick. FallObsession.com, that's our website, that's the hub. That's where you guys can go to find all of our content, including some reviews from guys like Brennan, who are out there hunting and making everything happen on do-it-yourself hunts. So gear and everything we got reviews on is field tested and proven by our own guys, and it's oftentimes gear that they've spent their own money on to acquire and use. So honest and legit reviews for sure. And then on fallobsession.com/podcast, you guys can provide us some feedback on there to our podcast or suggest topics, ask questions, whatever you need. And we also got some sweet merch on our website, so go pick you up a hat and a shirt. We got some frequent sales going on too, so you guys can get stuff at a good price. Brennan, thank you again, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
I did as well. All right, guys. Thank y'all for listening, and we will catch you all again next week for another Fall Obsession podcast episode.